It's time for the Department of Justice and the State Department to be true to their mission and recognize the significance of the election of 2016. The American people elected Donald Trump to change the way things are done in Washington. To us, truth and justice matter, and law and order is mandatory. No more cover-ups, no more rigged investigations, no more cutting organized criminal enterprises like the Clinton Foundation any slack. This week we learned that James Comey, long before that fateful July 4th weekend, when Hillary Clinton was interviewed, actually began drafting a memo exonerating a criminal target of a federal investigation of all criminal liability. And this week, we learned that both the Department of Justice and the State Department opposed a Freedom of Information release of foilable material on the Clinton email investigation. Both Justice and State fought against allowing the American people getting the truth on the Clinton investigation. And amazingly, both Justice and State defended the privacy of Hillary Rodham Clinton's records over our right to know. This must stop. The deep state, Obama and Clinton, the holdovers in both the Justice and State Departments must be eliminated. Even a federal judge is fed up with them ordering them to release information to the American public. Now, State Department Secretary Rex Tillerson may know the world, but I'm not so sure he understands government holdovers looking to protect the Clinton dynasty. Jeff Sessions needs to follow his prosecutorial instincts and open a federal criminal investigation into the actions of Hillary Rodham Clinton and impanel a grand jury immediately. This woman should not get a free pass because she lost an election. Her reign was one of bold, brazen, in-your-face, pay-to-play corruption. And I'm not even talking about the hypocrisy of this so-called women's rights activist whose feminism starts and ends with the women who have accused her husband of wrongdoing and the contributions to her foundation from countries that literally hate and kill women. And Jim Comey, he needs to be the target of an active criminal investigation for obstruction of justice, conspiracy, and perjury. His prejudging an investigation before 17 witnesses and the target of that criminal investigation were even interviewed is the essence of public corruption. He lied to the Senate Judiciary Committee when he said he only made the decision to not charge, which, by the way, was not his decision to make in the first place, after the investigation was completed.
Director, did you make the decision not to recommend criminal charges relating to classified information before or after Hillary Clinton was interviewed by the FBI on July the 2nd?
After. But if colleagues of ours believe I am lying about when I made this decision, please urge them to contact me privately so we can have a conversation about this. All I can do is tell you again, the decision was made after that because I didn't know what was going to happen in that interview. She maybe lied during the interview in a way we could prove.
That's a bunch of hogwash. Further proof of that corruption is that Hillary Clinton promised Attorney General Loretta Lynch that she could keep her job after that undisclosed meeting on the tarmac between Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch. And Jim Comey, Mr. Holier-than-thou, who has repeatedly shown himself to be a grandstander, an egomaniac, and a political operative, has shown himself to be the essence of the swamp that Americans so want to clean up. It is time to go after Jim Comey. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter, #Judge Jeanine. All right, and here now to...
Mr. President, this is wrong. I cannot discuss this with you.
It's a great question. Maybe if I were stronger, I would have. But look, I've seen the tweet about tapes. Lordy, I hope there are tapes.
Oh, Lordy. Judge Jeanine Pirro is here. So is there any penalty for being weak?
Well, you know what I think is so amazing about this is that Jim Comey comes across as someone who is so wily and so calculating. He's a predator. He makes the decision that the president is going to lie to him before he even has his first meeting. And so he decides that he's going to start recording or memorizing what was said in their conversations. And then he gets to the point where he says, you know what, I'm going to leak this stuff now. Why is he so comfortable leaking? What is it about his history, his background as a prosecutor? And what I would want to know is he the leaker? Is he the guy who was so comfortable? And the answer to why he didn't leak it himself about the seagulls on the beach and my wife was hogwash. Yeah. It was a distraction. And you know what? He did the same thing just now with the senator. What he said basically was, Lordy, I hope there are tapes. Well, that doesn't answer the question as to why someone else was asked.
Does it matter who he leaked it to? Because Daniel Richmond isn't just a buddy. I've been talking about this.
This guy is a liberal guy. Look, he worked with him in the United States. He worked with him in the U.S. Attorney's office. He was the appellate attorney there. You develop a very close relationship, I know from being DA, with my appellate people, okay? You talk to them about serious issues. But the fact that he was so comfortable that he did this to a liberal professor, and it's linked to the... It tells me that this isn't the first time that the guy's leaked. It tells me he's a predator. He was looking to take Donald down, or the president down, excuse me, and what he wanted to do was preserve himself. He is an operator. He is part of the Washington elite.
Well, I tell you what, it's interesting, though. Why didn't he leak out, if he did do a bunch of leaking, and some people are saying that, why didn't he leak out the Loretta Lynch stuff last year, where she told him, you know, when he's talking about the criminal investigation into Hillary Clinton, she goes, don't call it an investigation. We'll call it a matter.
I am outraged.
She was influencing the campaign and the election.
I am outraged because this is where the investigations need to go. This is where Senate Intel needs to focus right now. Loretta Lynch, we know, improperly met with Bill Clinton, the spouse of a target of an active criminal investigation. Right. She never admitted that she did it until she was caught. She uses the language of the Clinton campaign, and then she doesn't really do anything other than to promote the theory that nothing is going on here.
We still don't know what that memo is, and it can only be told by people behind closed doors that he may have read. Now, what I think is underreported is the fact is that he said, if I get this out to the New York Times, my hope is to get my side of the story out and launch a special counsel. Really? Yeah. Now all of a sudden, a guy that's not going to be investigated, you're determined to get a special counsel? Is this about revenge?
It's clearly about revenge. This is a setup. This is a predator who is setting up the president, as opposed to saying, you know, Mr. President, I know you're new to government, and I know that this isn't something you're comfortable with, but, you know, we're really not supposed to be talking about this kind of thing. He could have helped him in a very simple way. He refused to do it.
He froze. He was so shocked that Mike Flynn's name was brought up.
Jim Comey is not afraid of anyone.
Not Captain Courage.
Yeah, well, you know what? I love the way he nuanced that one himself.
I've got a feeling you got plenty to talk about this weekend.
Oh, wait until my open this weekend.
All right.
Justice, I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. Attorney General Jeff Sessions agrees to go before the Senate Intelligence Committee just 1 week after the blockbuster testimony of former FBI Director James Comey. Full analysis on that coming up. But first, to my opening statement. With the country on the verge of a constitutional crisis and a level of hysteria not witnessed since Watergate, the greatest political hoax since Eve convinced Adam to eat that apple is being spun by Jim Comey in a conspiracy worthy of a Greek tragedy. And like all Greek tragedies, there's no good ending. He arrives all indignant before a Senate Intelligence Committee, calling the President of the United States a liar, saying he's the victim. He's been defamed. The President said the FBI was poorly run. Imagine. Were your feelings hurt, Jim? As if we didn't already know the FBI was in disarray after your repeated debacles with Hillary Clinton in the run-up to the presidential election. Poor Jim. You sound like a 2-year-old. Grow up. On second thought, don't. You're tall enough. But what do we know? Jim Comey doesn't much like Donald Trump, actually admitting he felt slightly nauseous that he might be responsible for Trump's win. He does something he's never done with other presidents, including that font of veracity, Barack Obama. He decides Donald Trump might lie to him, so he calculates to document every alleged word of their encounter, take it with him, and then leak it to the press. The only problem, the record is a federal record, and removing it a clear violation of the Federal Records Act. Some foresight, though, huh? Thinking the president will lie to him. Comey's crystal ball at work. So he gives it to a friend to leak to the New York Times in order to get a special counsel to investigate the president. Curious. While he was head of the FBI, Trump was not under investigation. But once he's fired, humiliated, and an ex-employee, Comey decides Trump needs to be investigated. Jim, you had the power as the nation's chief law enforcement officer to investigate him, and you didn't. And now, a disgruntled ex-employee, you leak presidential conversations. Why? Your excuse? Once Donald Trump tweeted, "You better hope there are no tapes of your conversations," you say you had no choice but to defend yourself. Defend yourself? Your crystal ball must have been on overdrive, because what you defensively leaked in response to Trump tweet was published in the New York Times before Trump even tweeted. You were under oath, Jim. Are you sure you told the truth? So why not leak to the New York Times yourself?
I worried it would be like feeding seagulls at the beach if it was I who gave it to the media. So I asked my friend, make sure this gets out.
Really? Weren't you worried, though, that some reporter might out you? And, Jim, I'm having a real hard time believing this was your virgin attempt at leaking. Who even thinks like that, especially someone who is supposed to be the paradigm of virtue and ethics that you hold yourself out to be? And your hogwash about that shining city on a hill. You're the director of the FBI, acting like J. Edgar Hoover, surreptitiously leaking negative information about the president. Doesn't that send a message to the FBI that, hey, it's okay now to leak? You allow a New York Times article saying members of Trump's campaign had repeated contact with senior Russian intelligence officials to proliferate in spite of the fact you knew it wasn't true. You could have put truth to that lie, Jim, but you refused, allowing the country to suffer a trauma hyped to Watergate proportions. And if you didn't want to criticize the New York Times, why not at least surreptitiously leak to the Times that this was false? Or was your agenda to proliferate anti-Trump hate? And, Mr. America, one thing never leaked, that Donald Trump was not under investigation. Why refuse to say the president is not under investigation? You say because maybe one day he will be? That's your response? Maybe one day Martians will take a seat on the United States Supreme Court. Could it be, Jim, that being a team player is not in your DNA, that only center stage will do for you? And you're pretty damn wily when asked if an FBI agent has a duty to report a crime.
That's a good question. I don't know that there's a legal duty to report it. They certainly have a cultural, ethical duty to report it.
Are you kidding? Are you the same guy who lectured the country on a federal statute regarding Hillary Clinton? And now you're not sure about an issue central to your testimony? Like when you and your pal, now special counsel Mueller, had a showdown described as, quote, the single most extraordinary moment of the tumultuous Bush years? And obstruction of justice by the president? You and I both know, Jim, that if you believe that and don't report it, you're guilty of a felony.
I don't think it's for me to say whether the conversation I had with the president was an effort to obstruct. I took it as a very disturbing thing.
Not for you to say. Are you schizo? Are you the same guy who held a press conference to do what has never been done in the history of this country and announced to the world that no reasonable prosecutor would indict Hillary? By the way, Mr. America, how is it that you always seem to find yourself in the middle of a national crisis? Like that time you called in the FBI to rush you to John Ashcroft's hospital room to stop President Bush and save the nation. Jim, do you have illusions of grandeur? You spend a lot of time talking about your emotions.
It makes me mildly nauseous, so that gave me a queasy feeling. That's why I was so uneasy. I was so stunned. They were as shocked and troubled by it as I was. I was honestly concerned that he might lie. They confused me. It caused a whole lot of personal pain for me.
Was the job too much for you, Jim? Or was it straight politics? Why not just say, you know, Mr. President, I know you don't know the ways of Washington, but are you directing me to end an investigation? That way, no surreptitious leaking. The country wouldn't have to go through the trauma that's so much a part of your own personal drama. You might even have said, this is wrong, I can't do this. Like that time when Loretta Lynch asked you to lie to the country and not say Hillary was under investigation and instead use a parallel language the Clintons did. You did so, and you were dishonest with the American people. And even though you knew damn well Loretta Lynch was violating Justice Department ethics by even meeting the husband of a target of a long-standing active criminal investigation, you went along with her request to say that there was a Hillary Clinton matter and not an investigation. You knew it was wrong, but, quote, it wasn't a hill worth dying on. Man, are you dramatic. How many times were you pressured to do things during the Obama administration that weren't right? And why not report this? Why not surreptitiously leak? Why not ask for a special counselor for her? The truth? Jim, you're a political operative. You always have been. One who's addicted to drama, addicted to center stage. But like the main character in all Greek tragedies, your downfall is a consequence of a tragic flaw. A major weakness, your hubris. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter. That's my open. Hashtag Judge Janine. Joining me now is Counselor to President Trump, Kellyanne Conway. Hi, Kellyanne.
Hi. My first impression is I'm very pleased to be on your good side and hope to always remain there.
Let me tell you something. You know, the sad part of all this is once we find out what has happened, we realize that all the good stuff that you have been trying to talk about, the administration has been trying to talk about, has been basically covered by this theory, this conspiracy, the president under investigation. What is your reaction to this?
There really is a tale of two White Houses, and I'm here to talk about the many measures the president is taking, Janine, including just this very week, that has impact on people's lives, and that's why he's there. That's why the vice president's why we're all there. And this was Infrastructure Week. It was very successful. The president spent 4 of the 5 days working with governors, mayors, other municipal leaders, tribal leaders. He went to the Department of Transportation and made a huge announcement. And at the beginning of the week, he announced something I think everybody should be very happy about. A way to modernize and bring into the 21st century our air system, air traffic control system.
It's so pathetic.
You know, it was built to accommodate 100,000 passengers annually. We now have about 1 billion passengers annually. Right? So this will make it easier, safer, and more able just to compete with the demands. Let's see if the Democrats, who have promised to resist and obstruct and impede every effort by this president, let's see if they get on board with something as simple and nonpartisan as improving air traffic control. So your weights are less on the tarmac, the hassle is less, and frankly, safety is the number one concern. Also, just this week, veterans took a giant step forward. Literally, the government has struggled for decades to do something as simple as having seamless record keeping between the Department of Defense and the Veterans Administration. And this week, President Trump and Secretary David Shulkin at the VA came together and announced that now veterans will be treated as one patient through the system. It's a great step forward for them getting that seamless care. We've heard all these tragic stories about
horrible stories
veterans waiting for care, some dying waiting for care. Also, another week, another major insurer pulling out of the Obamacare exchanges. As Vice President Pence said very sternly just today, Obamacare is dead. The only people who won't admit that are the Democrats, who are in the way of better health care.
Yeah. You know, let me ask you about Comey. I know the president has indicated that he is willing to testify under oath. And Jim Comey, you know, has made all of these allegations about the president and you know, the suggestion that, you know, the president has done something wrong. Do you think that this puts an end to it, or do you think Jim Comey, especially with his good friend Bob Mueller, are not done yet?
I simply can't comment on Janine, and I would refer you to the president's own comments. I would refer you to the comments of his personal lawyer, Mr. Mark Hasowitz, who delivered those comments publicly the other day, and certainly people like you are out there expressing their opinions as well. But if you work in the White House, you really have no comment. The other thing I just wanted to preview for this coming week, because it's really exciting, is Workforce Development Week. And President Trump, along with his daughter Ivanka Trump, is also a senior advisor to the president, will be going to Wisconsin to meet with Governor Walker and Secretary of Labor Acosta. They'll be going there to talk at a technical college, really see what's going on there and get some best practices, as Ivanka has been doing with these roundtables and these listening sessions. This involvement in workforce development means that if people want a vocational educational technical educational skills certificate, they should have access to that. Not everybody is college material. Not everybody has to graduate from a four-year college with a mountain of debt and very few employment prospects.
And so this is something that's different from previous years.
Well, it is. And I've seen governors like Scott Walker, like Mike Pence when he was governor. I worked with him on this very initiative where people are saying, look, if you are in a skills certificate program, you can graduate and be employable. Welders, carpenters, plumbers, hairdressers.
All right,
that's all good. We need to value that. We need to value that as a country. And Ivanka Trump and her father will be out there doing that.
I think that's one of the reasons that the president was elected. Correct. But I want to talk about Jared Kushner has said he's willing to testify before the Senate Intel Committee. Today, the Attorney General Jeff Sessions says, I'm willing to testify. The president said, I'm willing to testify. Do you think that there is a way now to put an end to this, or do you think the Democrats are just going to keep going after the president until they're done?
I long ago stopped predicting what the Democrats will do. I do, to your larger point, though, about them outwardly saying resist, obstruct. Neil Gorsuch, whose credentials are beyond, beyond reproach, getting just a handful of Senate votes. I think none of them coming together on health care. We don't see any of them coming together on taxes or infrastructure. And I would tell you, the president always welcomes Democratic support, but you see some of them calling for, extreme measures already. And I just feel people need to, I know that it was Donald Trump as a candidate who was asked of that October 19th debate in Las Vegas, and asked every single day after that, 15 times we all were asked, will he accept the election results? The question is, when will they?
They won't. But does it ever get, when you've got so many good things to talk about, so many things that you're doing, when everyone is working so hard, do you ever feel like, why am I doing this?
No, I don't feel that way at all.
Never.
I'm there because I have a very unique opportunity as one little molecule in this entire administration to help impact people's lives. And I hear from them constantly. I travel this country a couple days a week, and we hear from people. People will get on social media. They'll call us at the White House. They send many letters. Please don't forget, and please remind the president. I always hear the same things. We're praying for him. We support you. We want the country to succeed. And there are hundreds of millions of Americans out there who support him and want his success.
I got one more thing. You are more than a little molecule in the administration. Let me say that. Give yourself more question. And finally, are there tapes?
The president has said he'll let us know, and he has said publicly he'll let us know. Everybody has to wait and see, and I convert that personally into no comment because I have no comment.
I got it. Kellyanne Conway, thanks so much for joining. It's good to see you. And up next, President Trump's attorney, Jay Sekulow, is standing by live with the reaction to all the Comey news. Plus, my one-on-one interview with Donald Trump is still ahead, Donald Trump Jr. And later, Hillary's running out of people to blame, but that's not stopping her from coming up with more exclusives. Tonight's treat, Justice, you don't want to miss it. A packed hour continues right here. Don't go away. Developing tonight, former FBI Director Jim Comey's stunning testimony continues to dominate the headlines. Joining me now with more is Chief Counsel at the American Center for Law and Justice, and now part of the president's legal team, Jay Sekulow. Jay, thanks so much. I want to talk about James Comey's legal exposure. I want to talk about what I, as a former prosecutor, see as real legal problems for Jim Comey, and maybe you can help me out here. So let's talk about, first of all, the Federal Records Act and Jim Comey writing a report in an FBI vehicle, surrounded by FBI, on an FBI laptop, after a meeting with the president. Isn't that a federal record?
Yeah, I think I lost some of your feed there, but you asked me if that's a violation of the Federal Records Act. But I will tell you it's also a violation of 18 U.S.C. 641. And this idea that he conveyed a government record. Look what he did. I mean, this is the FBI director. the FBI director gave this information to a third party to leak. So I think that James Comey has serious legal exposure. In fact, the special counsel should be looking into his activity to determine whether it's a violation of law. In my opinion, it is that clearly the way he conducted himself with the distribution of that memo, which, as you said, was on government material, government property, basically a 302 report, I think it raises serious legal issues. Yep.
All right. So what we've got now is this information, conversations or documentation of alleged conversations with the President of the United States. Is that classified, or is that something that can just willy-nilly be passed out when you leave?
I mean, first of all, if you had a conversation with the President of the United States and you're the FBI director, it's immediately covered by executive privilege at a minimum. And the nature of what was discussed, I mean, look what was being supposedly discussed, by the way, that we only have Jim Comey's side of this. And you're talking about Russian investigations, according to Jim Comey. I would think that would be classified information. Now, James Comey keeps this in his drawer and leaks it. Leaks it to a friend of his because he was afraid for his own personal reasons. And by the way, is this the guy you want? Is this the guy you want out there going after groups like ISIS and counterintelligence? He wasn't strong enough. I felt intimidated by Loretta Lynch. I mean, the reality is the legal exposure here, I think it's serious for Jim Comey.
Well,
really
I think it's serious, and I also think the reputation damage is huge. And, you know, the only problem, Jay, it seems to me, is he's like this with Bob Mueller. Bob Mueller, as special counsel, is in a position to have to assess who he's going to believe. If it's his word against his word, the president against Jim Comey. You and I both know that Mueller goes back to the 2004 days when, you know, Comey thought he was going to save the nation at the hospital bed of John Ashcroft. Who do you think Mueller's going to agree with?
Well, I think Mueller's going to have to, I think the special counsel is going to have to be very careful, because you now had an admission by the former FBI director of the leak of the information. And he said he cleared this testimony, by the way, with the special counsel, which raises another legal issue. Why is a witness clearing his, quote, testimony with the special counsel, who should include in the orbit of his investigation the FBI director who leaked information? He became the leaker in chief here. I mean, there's no question about it. But the three takeaways here are: there is no case against the President of the United States. And James Comey acknowledged that multiple times. There's never been an investigation of the president.
He's never been under investigation.
Memo, self-serving documentation for his own reputation, which he collapsed last week.
All right,
it was a collapse of James Comey.
Absolutely. But the thing that I find so stunning, why would he out and out admit that he leaked that information to a friend, specifically to leak to the New York Times, specifically to get a special counsel? Was he going to be outed? Why would you do that?
Well, I mean, look, he said, and you're exactly correct, and I thought the lead counsel in this case, Mark Hasowitz, said it right in his statement. I mean, look at the nature of the events that took place here. And what ends up happening? And he did this, he said, to get a special counsel. And by the way, what happens the next day after he leaks it? Special counsel. So you tell me what's going on here. You've been a prosecutor, you've been a judge. I've been a government lawyer, I've been in private practice. I will tell you, you just look at this evidence, you know that what's going on here is inside the Beltway situation. And I'll tell you something, the special counsel has to, if he's going to do his job, he better be looking at his friend as well.
Well,
period.
You know, and we all hope for that, but I don't know if history is any indication. I very much worry about these so-called objective investigations. Like, if you remember with Benghazi, you know, Hillary and the whole State Department, and they never even spoke to Hillary because they were pals of Hillary. Mueller now pal of Comey. Don't like it. Jay, go ahead.
All right, now I was going to say very quickly, there's a great legal team in place here for the president. These are serious issues that James Comey has put himself in the middle of. He's the one that has hoisted this constitutional issue on himself. I'm convinced with Mark Hasowitz and the legal team here that at the end of the day, it's going to be exactly what we saw at that hearing.
All
Nothing.
right. And
no
maybe,
case closed.
And maybe hoisted on his own petard. Jay Sekulow.
Could be.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Judge.
All right. Up next, my one-on-one interview with Donald Trump Jr., his explosive reaction to the Comey testimony, and what he has to say about his father's tweeting. Plus, my all-star political panel is on deck and ready to battle it out. Back in a moment.
Live from
America's News Headquarters, I'm Marianne Rafferty. 3 U.S. soldiers are dead after an attack by an Afghan soldier. A senior U.S. official telling Fox News that 3 Army Rangers died from an insider attack. Another U.S. soldier was wounded. The Taliban is claiming responsibility, and the group says in a statement that a Taliban loyalist joined the Afghan army to target U.S. and other NATO soldiers. President Trump has been briefed on the incident. And President Trump heading to Miami next week for a major address. He's expected to roll back President Obama's efforts to normalize relations with Cuba. The president reportedly wants to push Cuban President Raul Castro to allow more political freedom. Sources also confirmed to Fox News that the president is considering limiting American companies from dealing with businesses owned by the Cuban military. I'm Marianne Rafferty. Now back to Justice with Judge Jeanine. For your latest headlines, log on to foxnews.com.
Welcome back to Justice. Earlier, I sat down with President Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., to talk about his reaction to the Comey testimony, how he feels about the left's endless attacks on his family, and his dad's tactics on fighting the war on terror. Take a look. Donald, thanks so much for being with us. You know, it's been a very interesting couple of days, and I've known you a long time. Yeah. You have abided by that pledge that you took, where after the inauguration, you were going to focus on the business, you weren't going to get involved in Washington, and now it seems things have changed. Why?
Well, I don't think things have changed. I always said I was never going to get involved with the administration.
Right.
But I'm a politically minded guy. I always have been. I was way before we ever got into politics or my father got into politics. But, you know, when I see what's going on right now, when I see what went on for 10 months with the Russia nonsense and the smear, and then we see what happens on Thursday, it's like, give me a break. I mean, they're literally spent 10 months chasing a rabbit down a hole with essentially the sole purpose to try to take down my father. We were vindicated. I mean, totally.
Why do you say you were vindicated?
Look, listen, I think it's clear that, you know, everything that went on in the Comey testimony was basically ridiculous. They're saying, hey, he never asked me to stop a Russia investigation. When I hear the Flynn comments, you and I both know my father a long time. Well, when he tells you to do something,
yes,
guess what? There's no ambiguity in it. There's no, hey, I'm hoping. You and I are friends. Hey, I hope this happens, but you got to do your job. That's what he told Comey. And for this guy as a politician to then go back and write a memo, oh, he felt so threatened, but he didn't do anything.
Especially when we found out that there is no collusion. But weren't you angry when Comey said...
Marco Rubio hit it best.
Yeah.
Honestly, he said, of all the things that were leaked, the only thing that wasn't leaked was that Trump was never under investigation because there's nothing there.
Right.
How come that's not leaked?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the leak.
It's pretty scary when you think about it. The only thing that's out there basically totally vindicating Trump from a 10-month witch hunt, that never makes it anywhere. I mean, I think his divisiveness, the way he handled things, everything that leads up to this that we've seen over the last few months, and now what we know about how he handled the Loretta Lynch thing, explains perfectly why he should totally be fired.
Did he lie under oath when he said...
Well, the dates seem very confusing to me. Based on what I saw in the New York Times and based on his claim that it was because of a tweet from my father the day after...
That can't be the reason if it's based on a tweet when the New York Times had it.
Listen, he's a very sophisticated political player, and he's playing the game, but I think he even got caught up in his own nonsense in this one.
And what about the idea of leaking? With all the leaks coming from within the administration, that Jim Comey, someone who's in charge of, law enforcement in the United States, would consider leaking to a New York Times and not doing it himself. Does that suggest to you that maybe he was responsible for some of the leaks?
Well, I think almost without question. I mean, he said he's a leaker. If he did it this time, how many other times did they do it? I wish there was a follow-up for that. Maybe some of the senators up there aren't as quick-witted as they should be, but it's amazing that there wasn't. But I mean, if the head of the FBI is saying, then he's saying, well, if I was a stronger individual, I may. Yeah. Give me a break. Yeah. You're the head of the FBI. Yeah, you're not some Lynch. Baby pretending. Like, does anyone believe this? I mean, and if he is, he's that guy. Like, he's not strong enough to say something that he believes is right, that he goes and runs a memo, then he leaks it to the New York Times. I mean, I can't imagine anyone actually believing that that happened.
And calling your dad a liar.
Listen, I think he's proven himself to be a liar in all of this. I think he's proven himself to be a dishonest man of bad character.
The mainstream media and the left and the Democrats are doing everything in their power for the last, I don't know, 5 months since he's been in office, just calling him words like saying he's a blank holster, Stephen Colbert. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that is so contrary.
They've taken it so far. And, listen, I see it and I've taken it personally. Perhaps that's why I've been more vocal about it lately, because, the lines have been crossed so much.
They went after Ivanka's business. They went after Eric's charity, $16 million for pediatric cancer. I've been there many times. They want Jared and their sites. And then the Baron with the bloody head. I mean, isn't this beyond anything you guys ever expected would happen?
Unfortunately, yes. And I think we went in with eyes pretty open. I don't think we're naive by any stretch of the imagination. I think we knew it was going to be bad. But when I look at how bad it is, when I look at the conversations I have to, think about having with my kids every night, hopefully they don't see it, but as they get older, they're more likely to see it. It's pretty sad because, in the end, of all the people that ran, he's the only one that didn't need this job. My father didn't need this. He wanted to do this. He's 70 years old. He could do whatever he wanted for the rest of his life. But he's in there dealing with this, fighting for the people who elected him.
Terror. Your father's approach to terror is quite different from a lot of the leaders in Europe. Do you think that your father is the one who is going to have the ability to put an end to all of this?
Well, listen, let's make it more simple. He actually has an approach, which is, let's take these guys out. The others, they have no approach. Their approach is to sit back and do nothing. Mm-hmm. Their approach is to sit back and pretend there's not a problem. Keep calm and carry on. What does that mean? There are people blowing themselves up. There are people driving trucks through groups of people, killing them. This is not something that's just going to magically go away with hugs and kisses. This is not, it's mind-boggling. Okay. You have the people that talk about, the only way to defeat terror is by not allowing yourself to be terrorized. Tell that to the victims.
All right, let me move to another issue, tweeting.
Yes.
You have defended your father's tweeting, and there are those who say that his tweeting, steps on his own message.
Well, listen, I think, honestly, until the media chooses to cover him honestly, in an unbiased, their spin fashion, he's going to play monkey in the middle. He's just going to go right over the top, right to the people. And guess what? It works. And that's why they're so furious, because they are becoming more and more irrelevant every day. You can't get honesty. There's virtually no trust in the mainstream media these days. And so people are going to alternative sources. And if you go right to the source, as you would in anything else, you're going to get what he's actually thinking.
You have your father's energy. You have his smarts. You clearly can get very animated. You going to run for office?
No plans anytime soon.
No plans, but could you see yourself someday saying, this is so bad, it's time to get in there myself?
Listen, it affected him that way. And you say, you know what? If I can go in there and knock some heads around because I'll actually take on something instead of hide from it, much like we're talking about with the politicians as it relates to terror these days, you know what? Maybe you got to do it, but no time soon.
Donald Trump Jr., thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Still ahead, street justice. But first, a lot of breaking news to cover tonight with my political panel. They're up next. Stay right there.